Hello and welcome back to the Pave the Way podcast, a joint initiative with Raahgiri Foundation and the National Institute of Urban Affairs, where I, your host Akash Basu, speak with mobility experts and people with interesting ideas around the globe on all kinds of issues and ideas surrounding sustainable mobility and transport planning. On the podcast today, we have co-founder of Wheeling Happiness, Devika Malik. Wheeling Happiness is an NGO whose mission is to create an inclusive and barrier free society and to empower people with disabilities, women, and economically underserved communities. The foundation provides a helping hand to the differently abled who are in need of physical, mental, financial, and emotional support. I'll also try and do my best to introduce Devika, though I'm not sure I'll be able to do her much justice. Devika was born with hemiplegia, which causes paralysis to one side of the body. She's overcome the challenges of the disability to become an international para athlete with 8 national and 3 international medals at the World Para Athletics Grand Prix competition. She's a psychological counselor and an international disability inclusion advocate, and even a TEDx speaker. Oh, and she's also a social entrepreneur and the co-founder of the aforementioned Wheeling Happiness Foundation. Today, we'll be discussing issues around disability due to road safety issues, the numbers, the causes, and the solutions, both to reduce the numbers that are injured and how to handle post-crash care. I'm honored with this opportunity to speak with you. How are you, Devika?
I'm good. I'm good. It's really nice to hear this introduction coming from someone else. It makes you reflect on the journey.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I was going through how many things I could possibly say to during your intro. And there was just lots and lots of accomplishments. So I picked a few of them.
Thank you
Um,
so much.
of course. Why don't we start by you telling us a little more about yourself and the work that Wheeling Happiness does?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing with Wheeling Happiness Foundation is that it's not something that is external to me. It's very much a part of who I am and my identity as a disabled person. For a very long time, when I was younger and I was going through my own occupational therapy because I have hemiplegia. So, of course, I've had that experience as a very young child of undergoing physiotherapy, occupational therapy. And when my friends are out playing, I am undergoing therapy. Sometimes it used to be very disappointing for me because it used to be very painful as well. So then my mother had to kind of come up with creative ways to engage me in that because I needed that treatment. But moreover, being in that situation as a young person and realizing even at the tender age of 6 or 7 that you are different and what how other people perceive you, because your peers are not seeing other people like you in a school of thousands of children. There's maybe one other child like me who's a senior who I have never come across. So definitely my classroom of first graders has not come across someone else like me. So sometimes they would make fun of me. And also we were switching schools every 2 years because of my father being an army man. So I used to go home crying sometimes, and my parents used to tell me that, like, we can fight this battle for you. We can come to your school, we can talk to your teachers and your friends, but how often do you want us to do that? You need to stand up for yourself. And so at a very young age, inadvertently, I became a self advocate. I started explaining to 6-year-old children that I walk differently or I seem different because of a medical condition. And there are other skills that I have which make me more a part of them. So I started engaging a lot with debates, morning assemblies. When I was a third grader, I was the youngest debater in my school. So that was something which my mother kind of understood, that if I assimilate, I will not have self-esteem and confidence issues in life. Because when you look different, when people point out that there's something different about you, you tend to make yourself smaller, tend to hide yourself away. But fortunately for me, from a very young age, I was engaged in public speaking because that was one of the ways that my mother articulated for me to kind of keep up my self-esteem and self-confidence. And today, decades later, that is helping me, that skill is helping me to be an advocate for people with disabilities, use my voice where a lot of people like me, especially from the financially underserved sections of society in this country, don't have that voice. They don't get to exercise that agency. So if we can do that on their behalf, or more importantly, enable them to speak up for themselves. But for that, I need to have this voice that I have today, that I have used on international platforms, whether it's the United Nations, whether it's the Commonwealth Secretariat, to tell those world leaders that whenever you make any plans, whenever you execute any policies, don't leave people with disabilities behind, because we are the largest minority of the world. We are 15% of the world's population. And disability is dynamic. You can encounter it at any moment in your life. So it's not like we are a separate section of people who are disabled and the non-disabled people will never experience that in their lives. That's not the case. So making people understand that disability is a part of life, whether through an accident, whether through aging, everyone's going to encounter some form of disability for themselves or to their loved ones. And so universal design is in the best interest of all of us. Understanding all of this, advocating for all of this, that's how Wheeling Happiness Foundation came about, because when I was younger, and again, my mother was paralyzed below chest level when I was 8 years old, and she's been a wheelchair user for over 2 decades now. So when I was younger, I used to see that other women with similar conditions used to come and live in our house just to learn and observe from my mother how she is managing her life and being so active in spite of being a wheelchair user. So a lot of people were curious that you're able to do so much in spite of being on a wheelchair. And I'm in a similar condition, but I don't have so much mobility and independence. So ladies used to come and live in our house and just observe my mother's lifestyle and like go back with that knowledge. So that's when I told my mom that if we're already doing this at an individual level, if we formulate this into an organization, we'll be able to reach out to a larger audience and help a larger number of beneficiaries. And that's been the journey of Feeling Happiness.
Yeah, I mean, I've always noticed that some of the best organizations, or more like organizations that make a difference, are often done by people who have also been through the experience. And I think it's quite amazing that you were able to use this experience, especially being bullied at a young age, to turn it into this organization where you now help people, and you don't want everyone to have the same experience, and you want to educate the world on the fact that, you know, disability inclusion is universal inclusion. And yeah, I just think it's a really great message, and I've read about the great work that Wheeling Happiness does.
Yeah, because also I feel like when we talked about bullying, to a large extent, even they are 5-year-old kids, it's not their fault. It's just something they've not seen in their environment. And I think that is where the issue of accessibility or barriers comes in, even social barriers, but even physical barriers. Because if there is a child on a wheelchair, even though it is illegal to deny that child admission, knowing that your school is not designed to offer access to that child is missing out on like being more than education, because now I feel education, you can find it so much online, the basic learning, but schools are more about social integration. So a child on a wheelchair is missing out on that integration, and more importantly, those other non-disabled kids are missing out on experiencing that integration. If it's something they've never seen in their environment, how are they going to wrap their minds around it? And it's not like disabled people don't exist just because you don't see them out and about as much. It's because the constructed infrastructure is not friendly enough for them to be out and about all the time. So we always talk about this like a chicken and egg thing of whether I'm going to go outside first, or I'm going to wait for the infrastructure to be accessible enough for me to get outside. Like my mother used to compete in disability sports. So she had to go to the gym all the time. And she started going to this one gym every day. They did not have a ramp access. So every day she would go there, she would call 4 of the trainers out and make them lift her wheelchair and take her inside. So by the 10th day, they themselves were so embarrassed by the whole process that they constructed a ramp. But what that means is that now more people like her who wouldn't have had the audacity that she had to, tell them to come and do their good deed for the day by lifting her and taking her inside. Now those people, because they have that constructed infrastructure, they can also come out and follow in her lead and just live a fitter life, because irrespective of your disability, if you have a certain passion or you want to exercise for fitness, you should have that access.
Just excuse me, just 1 second. I'm so sorry. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. So I think, one of the things you had said was, we're not invisible. Like, disabled people are not invisible. They do exist. But I can also say generally, gym is one example, but, there really won't be resources or infrastructure generally set up for disabled persons in any given environment. You have to sometimes work to set that up. And it is important that you and your mother and just the organization are doing this work. Is there a reason it's called Wheeling Happiness?
Yeah, so the wheeling comes from the wheelchair.
That's what I thought.
And happiness, because like that's something my mom says very often, that the only thing that I suffer from is contagious happiness. So we just like put that all together and it's called wheeling happiness. And also because mobility is something which kind of, it does wheel happiness into your life. So sometimes we encounter people when we go to the villages to do our workshops. We have encountered people who have been homebound for over a decade just because they cannot afford a wheelchair that costs anywhere between 7,000 to like lakhs of rupees. There is no end to that. But a basic wheelchair that you can, basic active wheelchair that you can provide to a person can come in at around 12 to 15,000 rupees conveniently, but people can't even afford that. So when you bring those wheels into their lives after decades of just sitting at home, that is happiness, because they get to experience the outside world again. They get to like go out and interact with people and just be one with the world rather than lying on their bed and staring at the ceiling. How long can a person live like that,
Yeah, that's amazing. Before my next question, let me put some scary statistics out there. In the last decade, we have lost 1.3 million Indian lives on our roads, with I think over 5 million people injured. India also tops the world every single year with road crashes, with I think 400 plus fatalities a day. Statistics tell us that most people who face a disability, if it was not a condition at birth or some sort of human or natural condition that came later in life, it was due to road-related incidents almost 100% of the time. Even with para-athletes, and you, of course, must know more about this, but a majority of injured athletes and the reasons for para-athletes in general are road accidents. Could you elaborate a little more on the issue and also why this issue is not given more resources or attention?
You're absolutely right. I think also part of that statistic is the fact that it says that we own 1% of the world's cars, but we amount to 10% of the world's road deaths.
11%.
And again, you are absolutely right that so many of the para athletes are actually disabled due to road accidents that they have encountered in their lives. In fact, a lot of our beneficiaries fall into that category of disability as well. So largely in India, I think it would either be polio or then otherwise road accidents.
Wow.
But I mean, it's a shame, but also we are looking at a subcategory within that idea of road safety and fatalities, which is disability. But I think road safety as a whole has been an issue which has been acknowledged by many organizations and government entities, organizations as such as Raahgiri as well, that are doing wonderful work in this regard. But I think it's a combination of so many factors when you talk about roads and even potholes on the roads. Like there's the so many government entities have to be involved, and it just goes so far. It is such a rabbit hole. So I like to focus more on what we as citizens can do, sometimes we have to exercise our political power as well. We have to reach out to the people in charge. If there is a municipal corporation in your area and you feel like there are too many potholes within a 500 meter or 1 kilometer radius from your house, sometimes we have to take that active act of citizenship and like approach those officials and ensure that some improvements are made in that direction. And even as citizens, we have to be conscious of pedestrian safety. We have to be conscious of, if you are in a car, you have to be conscious of people on two-wheelers, people on bicycles, because fact is that those are the people who suffer more, statistically speaking. Those are the people who suffer more in terms of these road accidents and the resulting fatalities or disabilities. Uh, it is again a research fact that the economic burden of road accidents is greater on uh, poorer households, lower middle, and even below that. Though that class of people is more intensely affected by these road crashes, because it's a very logical thing. If somebody is on a scooter carrying four of their family members on that two-wheeler, so they already to begin with come from a financial situation where they cannot afford a four-wheeler. That is why they're carrying a family of four on that two-wheeler, right? And then they encounter an accident, many a times losing one of the members, maybe an earning member. So it just keeps building up from there. And again, this is something where I think numbers, we kind of become numb to numbers sometimes, because people die every day and it's in the news every day. And now with COVID as well, we've just been surrounded with so much death and morosity that maybe we just don't want to think about it unless it's hitting close to home. It's just sometimes for the sake of your own mental health, you tune it out, and numbers don't mean that much to people on a day-to-day basis. But when you think about it in anecdotal terms, like I can tell you about one of the girls that we work with through my foundation. We have been educating her and her sister for the last 3 years. They are now in their final year of college. This girl, when she was only 8 months old, the entire family, the father, the mother, and both the sisters were traveling on a two-wheeler, and they had an accident, and they lost the father on the spot. The mother profusely injured her right arm, and she was a government school primary level teacher. So she kind of had to relearn writing and everything with her left hand, because now that was the only job she had to provide for the rest of the family. One of the sisters came out safe, the younger sister, who was 8 months old at the time. She lost one of her legs and also became paralyzed waist down. So the other leg also does not function. Now she has an amputated child at home with the leg amputated. She has to take care of her own right arm injury, and then one more daughter to care for, and the government school primary level teacher's salary. And this is the situation in which she brought up these little girls. And up till fifth standard, because she used to take her child to the same school where she used to teach, that child got an education. But after sixth standard onwards, the schools refused, because it's a small village. They refused to take responsibility for her, because they said, एक क्लास से दूसरी क्लास में कौन लेके जाएगा उसको, like, how are we going to manage this wheelchair in the classrooms? Our school is not designed for this. So that girl, because her elder sister was only a year older than her, she's been studying from her books throughout these years, and then she gave her 10th boards through open schooling, because she had a passion for education. So once she gave her 10th boards through open schooling, that's when that family reached out to us and they said, we've come this far and I want to study further. So that's when I then gave her a tutor who would go to her home every day and tutor her. And that's how she cleared her 12th boards again from open schooling, provided her with a wheelchair, a good quality wheelchair, and all the other first aid materials that she needs in her day to day life. And then when she cleared those 12 boards as well, and it came time for college, I said, why don't you go out there and give all the entrance exams that you can? So again, we facilitated her travel from city to city to go and give all the entrance exams in all the universities. And she made it through one of them. She made it through one of the government universities. But again, it was made very clear to her that we cannot guarantee that your class will not take place on the second floor or the third floor, and we don't know how to get you there. And also, the hostel is not accessible. And if a government institution had provided that accessibility to them, they would have been able to afford, like, avail an affordable education. But because she was putting in that effort and I saw her passion, through my foundation, we got them admission in a private university, which is wheelchair accessible, including their hostel accommodation. So both of these girls, because the elder sister who is non-disabled is also the one who takes care of her daily needs. So both of the sisters, we got them admission together in this private university. One of them is studying commerce, one of them is studying photojournalism. They're both almost at the end of their courses now. One of them has got placed as well. So it is due to sheer grit, and education is one part of it. But again, I say that imagine, since she was a sixth grader, she didn't have a social circle because she didn't get to go to school. So just, the fact that looking at her Instagram account, looking at her enjoying the college fests, making friends, just hanging out with friends, those are the things that I am proud of, because education, anyway, she was getting it from distance education. She could have continued to do that until master's or whatever level she wants to study. But uh, having that opportunity to assimilate with your age mates and the social skills that gives you, that is quite unparalleled. But this is the life journey that this person has had due to a road accident. So this is how life changing road accidents are, and this is why we need to take road safety seriously.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what you were able to do for this family, and I'm sure you had many sorts of similar cases. With just the sheer amount of our lower socioeconomic class that has to go through these sort of accidents. I think we had also talked about before, just given the sheer number, you must, and your organization, you must be always over capacity. It must be difficult to maintain this. I mean, is it that there are many organizations that do similar work? How do we address the problem of just the sheer number of people from poor households who have faced these accidents and need help?
See, there are definitely multiple organizations in this space. There are multiple disabled people's organizations uh, taking different approaches and working for people with disabilities in different parts of the country. But it's it's never enough, right? Because this is something that we as civil society are putting in, but there also has to be more done in terms of what are the policies in place, what are the laws in place, which also on paper, there are some brilliant policies that exist for people with disabilities. There are laws made that give us access, that give us uh, pensions, that give us reservations, discounts on all the various things. But implementation is again something where I feel like we as civil society have to pitch in. My organization, we did a year-long project where we went from village to village and explained to people that they have certain, like they have a disability pension that is accessible to them. And then explain to them what is the paperwork that they need to do to access this facility. Because so many times there are brilliant policies on paper, but they don't trickle down to the people who need them because they don't have that information or that awareness. Also, every organization that's working in this space, they're all working with their own mandates. So if somebody gives me a call that they need finances for their medical treatment or they need a wheelchair, if I, as an organization, am not in that particular space, if that is not the mandate that I have made for myself, I may not be able to help them. But that is where I feel like I have kept a certain uniqueness to the nature of my organization. The idea is to enable people with disabilities in whatever form that they need that enablement and that empowerment. It's not up to me to tell them that, okay, I only want you to make candles or I only want you to make soap and sell it. I want you to do what you believe you're capable of doing. So we even have kids who are very curious about fashion. They're engaging, we're trying to engage them with that. We have, like I gave you an example, a lot of children who want to pursue further education. And we have a majority of people who want to explore sports. So we try to support them in whatever field they want to explore. That's the idea. But coming back to, this whole idea of the sheer just velocity of the number of road accidents and like how it is changing lives. Uh, I think it goes both ways, right? Like one is that we need to have better roads to start with. And but also people need to be more aware, people need to be more um, conscientious when they're following traffic rules. Especially as a pedestrian, like so many times when I'm crossing roads, it is so stressful because one, there is no pedestrian crossing for kilometers sometimes. So people, of course, people are not going to walk for 5 kilometers just to be able to cross the road. So a lot of times that is the reason that they are crossing through running traffic. And that is something which can be changed by just having better systems on the road. But as a user of a vehicle, as a user of whether it's a two-wheeler, four-wheeler, there are so many things that they tell you in public announcements every day: wear seat belts, wear helmets, stop at the light, and when you are on the road, travel in your own lane. We don't do that. A lot of us don't do that a lot of the time because there are other countries, other metropolitans where the traffic situation is as bad as it might be in Delhi or Mumbai. But even then, they're able to keep the traffic moving because simply because people stay in their lane. That is just something which is not in our nature as people. So it's not just about laws and policies. I think it's also a lot to do with um, our nature and our habits on the road as citizens.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it's maybe not. I can hear my. Just a second, sorry.
I can hear you fine though.
Okay, no, I could hear myself for a second. Okay, no, it's fine. Yeah, I think you bring up an important point, which is we often talk about road safety policies and how we need the bureaucracy and the higher ups to change these. But one thing we don't talk about much is behavior of individuals, especially things like driver behavior. I mean, it's a saying I've been told, if you learn how to drive in India, you can drive anywhere in the world, just because it's so unsafe, on the roads. You never know who's going to be coming wrong side. You never know which guy is gonna, skip a red light and speed right past you. We do need to change driver behavior. I mean, I think it was 2020 where the largest amount of road accidents came from wrong side driving and drunk driving. And these are, of course, I mean, there are laws in place that make sure these don't happen, but we just can't change the behavior. And I think it becomes a case of everyone else is doing it,
So
tragedy.
I personally have been a victim of wrong side driving because a guy came on a motorbike from the wrong side, B onto the footpath.
My God.
I am walking on the footpath, and to a certain extent, my I think my fault in that was that I had been walking for about an hour by that point. And because I was tired, I was probably a little zoned out, but also I felt safe because I was walking on a footpath. So I guess I wasn't paying much attention. But the next thing the next thing I remember is the tire of a bike in front of my eyes. And then that's it. Then I woke up on the other side of that 2-lane road. And the last visual I have is of a bike tire coming at me. Fortunately, I wasn't gravely injured in that accident, but it definitely gave me almost a phobia of crossing roads for the next 2 years thereafter. Like I could not cross a running road unless somebody was with me helping me cross. So this person probably just decided that they're going to ride on the footpath because they're going to cut through traffic that way. But it could have been anything. Like my back was stiff for a few days, so I went in for a few x-rays because I was like, maybe I have injured a disc or something. Fortunately, I recovered and there was nothing major that came from that accident in terms of injury. But yeah, this kind of thing happens all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes from this idea. It comes from both people and from the top up. It's that everything is designed to get from A to B as fast as possible. And that's what everyone wants, right? Individual behavior is that, yeah, if there's a route to go somewhere, but there's a long U-turn far away, you're just going to take it wrong side. And you'll know that other people are doing it too. Whereas also top down, we are seeing more and more roads built. We are seeing more and more underpasses built. We are seeing more that we want high-speed vehicles to be able to get from A to B as fast as possible, but really no infrastructure set up for pedestrians and cyclists to be able to cross or share the roads with these people. I live on Golf Course Road, which is now two 6-lane roadways on either side of the road. And there are families that need to cross that road every day. And it's 80, 100 kilometers per hour, cars going constantly. And you see them. I mean, I've had to cross that road before. It feels like you are just running the risk of getting hit every single time.
Yes. And imagine in these situations, a pedestrian who is using a walking cane or a pedestrian who is on a wheelchair. It's unimaginable. They've made low floor buses, but what are the situations on those bus stops? Are there actually, the bus is a low floor bus, but are there ramps on those bus stops? The sheer amount of crowding that we have on those bus stops, the amount of time that the bus is able to stop for due to the ongoing traffic, is it actually feasible for a person on a wheelchair to board that bus from that bus stop? Is it actually feasible for a person on a wheelchair or a visually impaired person to feel any sense of safety when they are crossing the road as a pedestrian? I mean, these are things that you would just shudder to even think of.
Seriously. All right. Just one thing that I want to come back to, which is I read on your on the Wheeling Happiness page, and you had also talked about it on the transformative power of sport. And it said that you had helped over 50 people with disabilities become sports persons. So I'd love for you to elaborate on that as well.
Yeah, so even currently during COVID times, I had a young lady reach out to me with, again, a very inspiring background. She's grown up in an orphanage. She had polio, so she was surrendered to the orphanage by her biological parents. She grew up in that orphanage, and the orphanage themselves, like, got her married to another individual with polio, which luckily she found a supportive husband in that man. And they both now, even though she's young, she is only around 28 years old, she has 2 young kids. Both the husband and wife have polio, and the husband rides an auto rickshaw, and that is their primary source of income. So the reason why she reached out to me during COVID was because, as you know, that autos, especially like auto rickshaw drivers, they had nothing to do for a long time, just like a lot of the daily wagers. So their income stopped, and she said, now I'm in a situation where I want to do para powerlifting. I'm passionate about it. My husband is supporting me. But the amount of money we have now, I can either continue to pay school fees for my two boys, or I can use it for my nutrition and training and sports activity. So I have to give up sports. So then I told her, you don't do that. Whatever you need as a sports person, as an aspiring sports person, I will provide for you. Whatever money you have, you use it for your kids and your household. So for continuously for a year, we supported her through the foundation. And then the next nationals that took place after that, she won a gold medal there. And just as recently as December, she has been able to go out of the country and participate in her first international tournament. And hopefully, if everything goes well, she might be able to represent the country in upcoming Asian Games or other, high-level international competitions.
Wow.
So definitely, and imagine like that kind of empowerment that she feels now. She says it to me so many times. She said, like, I have grown up in an orphanage, so I am somebody who's very I get along with everyone very easily because that was my survival, to get along with as many people as I could. But the people who were actually my family, my relatives, who knew that, like, who my biological parents are, those people have always shied away from me because I have this disability. And there are still certain stigmas that are associated with disability in our society, that it's a curse, it's because you might have done something bad in your previous birth, all kind of things. So she said those same people who kind of stayed away from me my whole life, now they want to, I have won national medals, so now they want to meet me, they want to talk to me. The school where I was educated, now they invite me to speak to their students, because that school is also run by the orphanage. So all the kids there don't really have a very solid family foundation. So they invited her back to show those kids that irrespective of your situation right now, you can make something of yourself. And she has become that example in her community. And she's got all of that through sport.
Yeah, I'm sure you get this a lot, but you really do amazing work.
Yeah, but also I think I'm constantly amazed and constantly inspired by the stories of these people who we have the opportunity to assist in furthering their dreams and their passions. So uh, of course, like, there's so many helping hands available, but there's definitely got to be some um, internal willpower and something internally driving you for you to even get out there and seek that help.
Mm-hmm. So, does sports, when you use sports, the transformative power of sports, I'm guessing it's not always with people who were former sports persons or even had an interest in sport? Or, I mean, has it ever been that it's just somebody with a disability where just the empowerment you get with the ability to play sports, is it along the lines of, if even with a disability, you can do anything you want?
Yeah, definitely. See, recreational sport for people with disabilities is still in a very nascent phase in this country.
Mm-hmm.
But when we talk about people with disability wanting to pursue sport, it's often because they find out from somebody else in their own community, or they've seen or they've read about, someone like my mother who became a Paralympic medalist at the age of 46 years. And they've read about it somewhere in some newspaper. And it just kind of clicks with them that maybe this is something that I can do for myself, because there are also financial incentives associated with sport. There are also, of course, that sense of, if I win a medal, then I will amount to something. Because unfortunately, so many people with disabilities are made to feel like they're not worth anything, because they're made to feel like liabilities on their caregivers, which to a certain extent is also because they're already so hard pressed financially. A majority of the people with disabilities in our country live in rural areas and are financially underserved. So when that burden, it's not the right word to use, but when they feel that burden, added financial burden of taking care of another member of the household with a disability, that person then feels that I need to do something to prove myself, to prove my own agency, my own independence, and for me to be recognized for something other than my disability. And I think sport gives them all of that. It gives you that platform to experience that sense of agency, to feel some pride, uh, to have other people feel proud of you. And often in states where the policies are good, also becomes a means of financial empowerment once you achieve a certain level of success in sport.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. It must be just so empowering to these people, must be life changing, and just all these case studies and these examples you provided. I'm sure you have so many more, but it's inspiring to anyone to listen to, stories like this. I think just before we wrap up, the name of the podcast is the Pave the Way podcast. So if you could, let's say, what we could realistically achieve in something like reducing the numbers, making our roads better, getting post crash care, have it better for people, especially for people in the lower socioeconomic class. How do we pave the forward realistically in the coming years?
I think we have to approach it from a citizen first mindset rather than trying to approach it from what uh, the government can do better or what policy makers can do better. Of course, there are organizations out there which are reaching out directly to policymakers and supporting them in making the right kind of decisions around these matters. But people listening to this as individual citizens, I think what we need to do is firstly be more mindful, be more reflective in terms of how are we using our roads as people. How are we doing the right thing? Are we following all the rules? How are we as pedestrians? How are we as drivers? Of how that is the first thing. Are we utilizing the roads correctly? And the second thing is that if we truly come from that place of concern for our fellow citizens, or even for just making the road safer for yourself and your family members, that little bit of consciousness to see, like we said in the beginning, maybe 500 meters, 1 kilometer of road around your own workplace or around your own home, to be mindful, are the traffic lights working properly here? Um, is this road actually accessible? Are there, how many potholes are there on the road? Just take uh, cognizance of all of these things and reach out to your local authorities to make it better. And if you can, as citizens, contribute and ensure that you can add to the accessibility features of that area. If there's a bus stop there, maybe be mindful, is there a ramp if a low floor bus stops by? Or if there's a metro station there, a lot of times, the metro rail is one of the most accessible, most disabled friendly forms of public transport by comparison to other forms of public transport available. But even there, sometimes there's that last mile accessibility issue of, if there is an elevator to access the metro station, but that elevator itself is built on a raised platform. So how will a person who's using a wheelchair get into that lift?
Mhm.
So if we as civil society people can actually come together, make some contributions, add some universal design and accessibility features to the place where we are living, I think that is a grand contribution that you can make, which may seem small. Uh, Constructing one ramp, maybe a few thousand rupees, maybe contributing to organizations that are working in this space, contributing financially, contributing your time, just being a cognizant citizen and understanding that this is a very real issue which is impacting a lot of lives, which can be saved otherwise, which do not have to end in tragic circumstances. I think with that conscientiousness we can change a lot of the scenario right now. I think Raahgiri is a great example of that. Of course, we are doing it online now, but when the roads are shut off to transport for 2 hours, 3 hours in the morning, it it's so wholesome. It changes the entire nature of public spaces. You see people on their bikes, you see people by bikes and bicycles, you see people on their roller skates, you see people just, coming out and enjoying and owning back the public spaces. That's how it should be. We should not be afraid. We should not have to constantly be afraid of using public spaces. We should not have that constant fear of, every time I cross the road might be the last time. That's no way to live.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've brilliantly highlighted the role of individual responsibility in all of this. I think what we even here, what we talk about more is the role of our higher ups, the role of the bureaucracy, and making these changes. We need to adjust our roads, but taking a citizen first approach, especially after hearing it from you, seems so much more important. You can really make individual change. It's something I had studied when I was in college, which is the tragedy of the commons, which is you won't participate in making a difference because you feel like your individual contribution won't do anything to the bigger picture. So it's this idea that, why not walk a 500-meter distance instead of getting a car, instead of getting in a car. And the idea is that people say, but my not taking a 500-meter trip is not going to do anything to the environment. It's not going to do anything to help people. But that's the mindset that keeps us away. That's why an individual person.
Nowadays, to be very honest, we all have bragging rights available to us at our fingertips with social media. So even if you do something and you feel like it won't make a difference to the bigger picture, maybe it won't. But maybe you touched one life. And that is a gratification that you get to live with for the rest of your life. That is a gratification that you get to share with your networks on social media all the time. I mean, whatever drives you, but it's just knowing that impact to any one person's life other than yourself. That is a great gratification that genuinely adds years to your life, and you can really live to tell that story for the ages.
Absolutely. I agree. Thank you so much for coming on. I think to anyone listening and to me as well, we would have all learned so much, and it was really quite amazing listening to the success stories, and credit to you for helping them and inspiring to all of us to hear. It's just, I'm in awe as to what, anybody can achieve if you put your mind to it. And yeah, it's been really, really lovely having you on here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye. So